I'd like to share with you a story that I heard from the person who it happened to himself. His name is Rabbi Wallace, and he is one of the most incredible Jews in the world, and he's a Baal Teshuvah, a person who improved his way of life, and he became so turned on to serve Hashem that he makes arachim seminars around the world where he gathers non-religious people and he welcomes them back to Judaism. And he has, to his credit, scores of frum families, religious families who were once upon a time secular and non-religious, but because he was such a tzaddik and Baal Teshuvah and he repented from his ways, Hashem gave him a koach to be mashpia, to influence thousands of people around the world. And Arachim today is rated from the greatest Jewish organizations like Eshat Torah or Sameach, Arachim. These are the names in Kiruv Rechokim today. So recently, Project Inspire invited him to speak, and he said over the story of his life. The story took him over an hour and a half. I plan on condensing it to about 12 minutes. The story goes that his parents survived the Holocaust. And it was a miracle. We're going to talk about it later, how they survived the Holocaust, which was Nisim Shebetoch Nisim, miracles and miracles. But when they came to America after the Holocaust, they settled in a non-Orthodox neighborhood in the Bronx. It wasn't too Jewish. Maybe there was some Jews there. Orthodox means frum, someone who keeps the Torah. Secular means somebody who acts like a goy. And it turns out, living in the Bronx, he grew up with blacks and Italians, and he acted like them too. He wasn't religious, just like they have leather jackets with a logo on it. He became part of a club, and he used to build his body up, and he wasn't shaykh to from Yiddishkeit.
Was he really?
And
was he really a Jew?
Believe it or not, it might be hard for you to believe, but there are Jews today that don't act too religious. And they act more like goyim than they do like rabbani.
Was he born religious?
We call them tinok shenishba, which means a child that was kidnapped. He wasn't really kidnapped, but by growing up without a yeshiva, without a kehillah, and just living amongst the goyim, so we consider it as if he was like a child that was kidnapped amongst the goyim, and therefore he doesn't know anything about Judaism. Yes?
Were they born religious?
His parents, it seems, were religious, more than he was, but when they came here, they just let their kid act like the kids in the street, and growing up amongst goyim, he acted like a guy. And he wanted to be part of their club, this way they wouldn't beat him up for being Jewish. So he acted like them, and he looked like an Italian, and did not look like a frum Jew. It turns out, he started a business, and eventually he was in the army, and he flew helicopters for the American army, and he was even going to be sent to Vietnam to the war, but instead he ended up being in charge of making the airplanes or helicopters and ordering all the parts, and eventually established a successful business. He got married to a girl who was not religious, also like himself, and one day he told her, we want to move to Israel. Eventually, she followed him, they went to Israel, and he was even in the Israeli army for a while, flying helicopters and making the parts and ordering the parts. And he wasn't a Shomer Torah mitzvot. He wasn't someone who observed the Torah the way it should be observed. But like we said, it wasn't really his fault. There are many Jews today, they don't live in a neighborhood of a yeshiva, a shul, so they don't know anything about their heritage, about their tradition, about the Mesorah, the Torah, the Yiddishkeit. Turns out One day, he was in Israel, and his wife said, I didn't have time to make supper today. I was too busy. It was a very hectic week. Can you go to our restaurant? I heard there's a new restaurant that opened up. I think it was in Tel Aviv. Just order us dinner. And he was waiting in line at this restaurant, and he was planning on ordering basar lavan. Basar lavan means white meat, but really it's a nickname for chazir, for pork, for pig. And he was about to order it from a restaurant that was selling taref in Israel. And as he's waiting in line, he had a flashback of something he once heard, that his grandfather was killed by the Nazis in Machshma because they took a piece of pork and they told him, hey, Jewish man, if you eat this pork, we're going to let you free. You can go home to your family. But otherwise, we're going to have to kill you in front of all these Jews over here. And he says he remembered hearing that his grandfather said, I'm not going to eat taref in front of all the people here, the Jewish people. If a guy wants to make a Jew do an avirah in public, the Jew has to be willing, yahareg v'yavor, to give his life and not transgress the Torah in public. So he thought to himself, isn't that strange? My grandfather died because he wouldn't eat a piece of pork, and here I'm waiting in line to get a... So he started thinking to himself, that's crazy. Why did he let himself die for not eating a piece of taref? But then he said, maybe I'm the crazy one. Living in a free country, with democracy, with freedom, and here on my own free will, I'm choosing to buy. So he walked out of the line and he started screaming. He said, I don't want it. I don't want it. He went home and he told his wife, I didn't get it. I don't want to get it. I don't know. I'm upset. We shouldn't be eating this. My grandfather died before eating it. So I don't know what they ate for supper that night. But a little later, he heard there's a seminar where they're inviting Jews for a Shabbaton. That's when you get together for a few days of speeches back to back from big lecturers, big talkers. And he figured, let's go. I want to find out about Judaism. I want to find out why my grandfather didn't eat the meat. That's what I want to know. So he wasn't religious. And he went, a seminar is usually done like at a hotel, a Shabbaton, there's food, there's speakers, and they try to outreach to talk to people about Judaism, so if they don't know about mitzvot, they hear about it. It's like a Jewish education crammed into 3 days with a bunch of rabbis. And they're there, and he's at the Shabbaton, the seminar, which was run by Arachim, which means values. The name Arachim means Jewish values. It teaches you what's valuable to a Jew. And he was listening to speeches, and then there was a break before Mincha, and there was a rabbi teaching Gemara Sukkah. And he started asking all types of questions in the Gemara on the laws of the Sukkah and the Lulav. And he's asking, and this surprised Mr. Wallace, because he never saw that. Where he studied Catholicism, he studied Islam, he studied other religions, and he was told that they're not supposed to ask too many questions on it. And here, by the Jews, they're asking so many questions. So then he thought to himself, I get it. The Jews have the truth. When you have the truth, you're not afraid of questions. Ask me as many questions you want, they know the truth. They don't have the truth, the Goyim. So they say, don't ask questions. But then, that only moved him intellectually in his mind, that Judaism is the truth. But what moved him emotionally in his heart? When it came time for the Sudat Shabbat, he saw everyone singing songs. Can you please leave his desk, please?
Rabbi, you broke it. I didn't break it. Okay.
He said, okay, thanks for the interruption. That must have been a very important pen or liquid paper if we had to interrupt the talk. I'm sorry. You have to realize everyone in this room is kitanim, children, and do you think children know how to behave?
Quiet.
They're not bar mitzvah yet. They're not mature yet. And it turns out he's singing with them on Shabbat, and he never saw people sing when they eat before. He never saw it. Usually he knows when he wants to eat, he just eats and then he goes back to his TV. He never saw people eating slowly and singing songs. And then they started to dance. And then they pulled him in and he found himself dancing between two rabbis. This surprised him. And then he realized they got this thing called Shabbat, which is really, special, relaxing. And this turned him on his heart. So it turns out by the end of the Shabbaton, he decided to become religious. And his wife says, "What are you talking about? Are you crazy? You want to be religious?" He says, "Yes." And he had one of those kippahs they gave out. And he says, "I'm going to keep it on." She says, "What are you talking? Come on, take it off your head." He says, "No. And I want to go to my father's house to get a pair of tefillin. I know that Jewish men are supposed to wear those black boxes on their head and on their arm. I want to get it. I'm going to put it on tomorrow." She says, "What are you talking about? You want to go to Daddy's house to get it? Okay, good. Go to Daddy's house. I'll put some sense into your head." And he goes to Daddy's house, and as he's standing there, he's wearing a yarmulke. And his father sees some of the yarmulke, and he says, "Wow, what's this?" He says, "Daddy, do you have the tefillin I put on my bar mitzvah day that time years ago? I want to start wearing it again." He wasn't religious, didn't put on tefillin every day, didn't have tzitzit. And his father started staring at him. And he started nodding his head. He said, "Yeah, I'll get it for you." That's great news. And he says to his daughter-in-law, who's staring like, "What's going on here?" He says, "Shall I tell you a story? You know how I met my wife? You know I met his mother? Because of tefillin." Listen to a story unreal. He said he was in the Auschwitz death camp where they killed so many Yidden, Rahman al-Islam. The Germans killed almost half the Jewish people in the world.
Oh, whoa.
And you know what? He said he was there, and it was 2 weeks before the liberation. Liberation means the end of the war, when they were freed by the Americans who came to the rescue, Baruch Hashem, and the British. And you know what? He says it was 2 weeks before the end of the war, and I was wearing tefillin. Someone gave it to me. He threw it at me. I thought it was a bag of food, and then I saw it was boxes, and then I realized the Jewish thing. I was putting it on, and the Germans caught me, and they said they were going to hang me for wearing stage with a bunch of Jews watching for wearing tefillin. And he said, standing there, I was watching. Before we kill you, that's like before they want to kill someone. Then the last wish. Can I put on the tefillin one more? He got all angry. He said, yeah. Why I hung you, and you could be dangling in the air with. There was another. Let's torture him. While they hit him with a whip on his from the pressure. So whispers in his ear, it says, "Jew." And he says, "No, I'm smashing him. And they thought he died. Sorry if I'm scaring. 75 years ago. Alive. And when the